You're the last son of Krypton. And even though you've been raised as a human being, you are not one of them. They can be a great people, Kal-El, if they choose to be. They only lack the light, which is why, above all else, I have sent them you, my son. Hello everyone, in honor of Justice League, you're on an all-new My Favorite segment, and today I'm going to be going over my top 10 personal favorite Superman films. Now, this is my personal ranking. It's not exactly what I consider the best, but it's just my most favorites, and it also includes not only motion pictures that came out theatrically, but also straight-to-DVD animated films as well. To start off the list at number 10, it's kind of a controversial taste, really. There's two theatrical Superman films that I consider really low, but there's one that's actually worse than the one I'm about to talk about, but I just don't like this one as much as the other, and that is Superman 3. This is pretty much the downfall of the Christopher Reeve Superman films. Now, it does have its moments. It's much better than Quest for Peace, but for me, it's just a little odd. The very beginning, the opening, is where Richard Lester's type of slapstick comedy really starts to show in this film. Superman is pretty much a joke at this point. You lose all seriousness that Richard Donner set up in Superman and half of Superman 2, about 85% of it. And Richard Lester really takes over with this type of quirky slapstick comedy. But you do get some interesting angles. Lois is featured briefly at the beginning, but then you get the introduction of Lana Lang. Yeah, Martha Kent and Ed O'Toole from Smallville. And that stuff is actually pretty interesting considering we saw Lana at the beginning of Superman the movie. But this is also the first time where Lex Luthor is not a villain. Robert Vaughn plays a villain. He's pretty much kind of like Lex Luthor, but he's into computers. We have Richard Pryor. Now, of course, it's not the most serious Superman, but Richard Pryor is actually the best part about this whole movie. You don't believe me? Just watch the film and go to that cowboy hat scene. It is hysterical. It's crazy, but besides that, you have him create synthetic kryptonite, and Superman turns evil, and Christopher Reeve's acting is brilliant as Superman, and it's really, really conveyed well here when he turns bad. When he turns bad, he turns bad, and that junkyard fight is probably the only redeemable factor of this movie. However, it kind of has a weak third act. It really plays along computers and video games at an early age, but I don't know. I just don't like this one as much, even though it does have some wonderful moments, and it is a better made film than some of the others. It's just my least favorite. I know I'm in the minority here, but Superman 3 and 4 could really go neck to neck, but Superman 3, I just don't really find that many things in it for me to keep rewatching it. There's certain moments, sure, but as a whole, it's really, really hard to watch this film as a whole product, for me at least. So Superman 3 is probably my least favorite Superman movie. Number 9, it's a film that's much worse, but a film that I enjoy, and that is Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Gene Hackman is back. You have Ducky from Pretty in Pink. Yeah, John Cryer as his nephew. Christopher Reeve here. The lamest villain, Nuclear Man. Oh my god. And A Person Breathes in Space. Just when the series hits its utmost ludicrousy. I don't know, this film is the exact opposite of Superman the movie. Superman the movie was Americana taken seriously. Superman 4 is what everybody fears Superman the movie would have been. It's just not serious, but it does have some unique themes of ending nuclear war at a time that the Cold War was going on. It's a very noble and very interesting theme for Superman to tackle. It feels like they're actually trying in some parts, while other parts they don't try at all. It's just breaks the bounds of reality and realism entirely, and the bad special effects do not help. They even make up powers such as him moving objects with his mind. It's just nuts. And Nuclear Man, that does not help. Not even his nails, nothing. But Gene Hackman and Christopher Reeve alone make this enjoyable, and it somewhat feels like there's a Superman movie in there. It's just a shell of its former self. But I can rewatch this more than Superman 3. Even though it's a really horrible film, there's just something about it that I always find interesting and enjoyable in some weird, bad way. I know that's horrible. It's like torturing myself, but hey, if it's on TV and there's nothing else on, I may check it out, have a few chuckles, wonder where did they all go wrong, but yeah, it's a quest for peace, and I love that ending speech that Superman gives. it hints at a more hopeful, brighter future for the series and the world. And that's something very bold for a big movie like that, especially during a time when superhero films weren't really considered serious and not taken seriously, with Quest for Peace being evidence of that. Above the Quest for Peace at number 8 is Superman vs. the Elite. There's a lot of great DC animated original films, but I really like Superman vs. the Elite. My only con with it is a weird animation, but the Elite is this other superhero group that becomes more popular than Superman, but they kill. And it's a very interesting tale about Superman's morality. I really find this a little bit underrated. Above all, we get to see Superman's contemplation and also just burden he's dealing with being Superman, being an icon, and what happens when his morality, when his values are basically ignored and corrupted. And there's more to the Elite, of course, than meets the eye, but it's very interesting seeing Superman not only challenge physically, having other heroes take the limelight, but having his whole morality and values tested within a society with other heroes testing that. Testing his whole ideology as a character is very, very interesting, and I really like it for that fact. It does something very different than the other DC animated films, and really goes down to what makes Superman a hero, what makes him a superhero, and what makes him Superman. Number 7 on my list is another animated film called Superman Batman Public Enemies. I really love this. Tim Daly, Kevin Conroy reprise the roles of Batman and Superman, and Lex Luthor pretty much sets up Superman and pretty much makes the public and other heroes working for him turn against Batman and Superman, making them public enemies of the nation. It is an awesome movie with them fighting other heroes joining them, and them proving Superman's innocence and ultimately proving that Lex Luthor is an evil mastermind that is President of the United States. Not too far-fetched in this day and age, but it's an awesome Superman movie where you get to see him and Batman team up for once instead of fight each other, so that's quite nice. Number 6 on my list is Superman Returns. Now, I actually really like Superman Returns. I think it's a very well-made movie, but I don't think it's a good Superman movie, if that makes any sense. It was really well reviewed, and it was a sequel in a way to the Richard Donner Superman, to the Christopher Reeve Superman, a continuation of that universe. But it was kind of boring, it didn't have that much action, and that's what hurt the film, but ultimately what really hurt the film upon repeated viewings is kind of like Star Wars The Force Awakens, where it's a good movie, but you realize you've seen this movie in a better film called Superman the Movie, or like Star Wars. So like, Superman Returns was good, but I realized I saw it in a better movie called Superman the Movie. And that's how I felt about it. It didn't do anything really new. It kind of like retreaded old stuff and didn't have anything action-packed, didn't do anything well. Plus, it did have some good performances. I like Brandon Routh. He's very underrated. As a matter of fact, Superman Returns, the video game, is actually much better than the movie. Play that in Spider-Man 3 if you're disappointed on the movies. Brandon Routh is awesome in that. I wish they used a story of the video game in this. Kate Bosworth does an okay job as Lois Lane. James Marsden, Cyclops didn't really need to be there. He's kind of like the third wheel in this, and I didn't like the Richard character that much. Jimmy Olsen and Perry White were okay. Kevin Spacey did a good job as Lex Luthor. Very much trying to be like Gene Hackman, though. But it's good on its own. But the movie does have Superman have a kid. That's interesting, but in a way they made him a bastard father in this. But you can see why Lois is mad. But one of my favorite things about this movie that doesn't get mentioned, she says the world doesn't need Superman. And he's like, a world doesn't need a Superman. Every day I hear people cry for a savior, cry for a Superman. The world needs one. And I love that. There's bigger themes going on here. I like seeing footage of him saving people around the world. And the flashbacks, the way it's shot, everything's really well done in that regard. And I kind of do wish they gave Bryan Singer one more chance to go Wrath of Khan in the original Man of Steel sequel that was supposed to be in 2009 with Brandon Routh having like the mullet. That would have been kind of cool. And the direction of him having a kid would have been like the Rebirth series. But it's in the past, and ultimately it was a nice revisit to the Donner Christopher Reeve universe. I just think you needed another type of Superman for the 21st century, and Superman Returns is a little bit lower on my list, but it's still a wonderfully crafted film. I just regret that Bryan Singer made such a boring Superman movie, and it led to an even worse X-Men 3. Yeah, I'm just upset about that whole ordeal and what could have been, but it is what it is, and it's number 6 at my list. Number 5 on my list is Superman 2, the 1980 version. Richard Lester's cut of the film that has Superman's mother, different flashback. Basically, the recut and the theatrical version of Superman 2. I really like this movie. This is like the setup of superhero sequels and really led to the template later on used in films like Spider-Man 2 and other superhero genre films. Superman 2 is a very well-made film. A lot of it, about 85% of it, is Richard Donner's cut, and after seeing both versions you can tell which one's which, just based on the level of camp added by Richard Lester, but I do like it. It's one Superman against three Superman, General Zod, Ursa, Non. Such an awesome movie, reunites Lex Luthor. It is a great sequel, really kind of the last Superman that continues a Richard Donner vibe. That's probably because most of it was directed by him. But I really like this film, and then Lois and Clark's relationship. This one has him have a magical kiss that makes her forget. But I do like the ending, and then the bully and him basically coming back saying I worked out. Has a lot of good humor and dread there. And it was nice seeing Superman fight a physical threat. He fought somebody who was very intelligent and matched him mentally with Lex Luthor, but this time we get to see him fight against not only one but three people who match him physically, and that's very, very different and a good direction. And also makes you question, can Clark Kent be Superman? Can he go without being Superman? Does the world need a Superman? And Superman 2 shows you why Clark Kent must be Superman, why Superman must be around, and ultimately why he can't live a certain life like a human like he wants to. There's a lot of great questions here. Again, like other films like Spider-Man 2 borrowed, about power and its use. Such a good sequel. I really like this, but I like the other Superman 2 and the other films a bit better than this now. But it is an awesome, awesome movie. I really love it. Has that whole Paris scene at the beginning. Ultimately, it's a lighthearted, serious, fun, action-packed adventure. And if you're a fan of Superman the movie, you will not be let down by Superman 2. In many ways, it is in fact superior than Superman the movie, in many ways. Number 4 on my list, 3 and 4 are kind of tied, but number 4 on my list is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I like Henry Cavill's performance in this film and the whole ideology of Superman and society reacting towards him better in this film than Man of Steel. I also like Lois and Clark's relationship better in this film than in Man of Steel, but Man of Steel is still a better film. And BVS, even though it has all those great Superman moments, as a whole, it's not better than the other Superman movies. But it's an awesome movie, especially the Ultimate Edition, which should have really been the theatrical. Warner Brothers just botched that up. But I like it. It's basically like, what if Superman existed in the real world, and how would people really react towards him? That's what I like about it. Sure, it's a little bit dark. People may call him emo, but you know what I like about it? It's a 21st century Superman. It's a Superman for our age. It's not the campy Superman. And really, if a Superman did exist, this is how society would treat him. Look how human beings treat one another on this earth. Can you imagine how we would treat an alien with godlike powers? Is it really that far-fetched? And I like that. You also get to see the ideology challenge with Batman's. Ben Affleck's performance is great. Clark and Lois in this are fantastic. The relationship, her actually knowing he's Superman, that adds a whole nother level to it, like the Lois and Clark TV show, the comics, and Smallville. So it was really nice seeing that area. Sure, they tackled the Doomsday storyline a bit too early. Sure, J.C. Eisenberg is a bit campy, but he kind of reminded me more of the early mad scientist Lex you saw from the comics. So I could kind of see that, a mixture between that and the 90s Lex Luthor from like the Death of Superman arc. Overall, it has some deep issues for Superman. It's just maybe a film that tried to do too much with too little time. Too much in one film, where if they just maybe just had Batman and Superman's ideologies clash, it would have been a much better film. But hey, it brought us Wonder Woman, it set up the death of Superman, and ultimately set up the upcoming Justice League film. Number 3 on my list is Man of Steel. I like this better than BVS. Again, the performance was good, but Man of Steel was a good Superman film. Superman Returns is a better film than Man of Steel, but Man of Steel is a better Superman film. This Superman throws a punch. The only thing I don't like is Lois and Clark's forced a relationship, and some of like the flashbacks is very much trying to capture the Nolan vibe from the Dark Knight trilogy, more specifically Batman Begins. Some of that might have to be with Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer's involvement, but it's a fantastic movie. That opening on Krypton is so epic. Russell Crowe's great. Only part I call bullshit on this movie is Jonathan Kent in the tornado. There's no way Clark would have let him die in a tornado. It doesn't have the same effect as Glenn Ford in the original. But I do like the whole first contact alien invasion angle. It's very cool. The Battle of Smallville is awesome. That last fight, Zod's there. I wish Zod said kneel before Zod, but Michael Shannon played a pretty crazy Zod, and I love it when Henry Cavill's like, "You're a monster, Zod, and I'm gonna stop you." Whoosh, they fight Dragon Ball Z style. All the little Easter eggs, a casino that leads to Morgan Edge, which ultimately might lead to Darkseid, Wayne Enterprises, LexCorp, different things like that are just awesome. Above all, it's a good reimagining of the Superman legend and probably the best Superman film since the first two Donner films, I would say. It definitely is a really entertaining and epic film. And say what you will about the film, it may not be the best movie ever, may not be the best Superman, but it's a highly enjoyable Superman film and among one of my favorites. I never get let down when I watch this. I really enjoyed Man of Steel. I don't know about anybody else, but I thought it was a modern epic, and Hans Zimmer's score was just fantastic. I wasn't expecting to like it. I wanted Tom Welling as Superman. I wanted a continuation of Superman Returns. I'm like, why are we getting this? But you know what? This is Superman. This reminds me of the comics, and Zack Snyder did a hell of a job. Probably one of my favorite films of his, along with Watchmen. Such a fantastic reimagining of Superman, and I hope we get to explore more of this world, not only in Justice League, but future solo sequels for this Superman. Henry Cavill is very underrated in the role. Number 2 on my list is Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. Wow, what could have been. Seriously, I wish Richard Donner did everything, but maybe it wouldn't have led to The Goonies or Lethal Weapon, but you know what? It is a fantastic film. Gene Hackman's in this. Marlon Brando gets added back in. This was compiled with unfinished scenes and test screen footage. I love how she discovers Clark's secret by basically shooting him with a blank bullet instead of the fire. Shows you Lois's savviness, intelligence, and all around just sassy nature. I just love Margot Kidder as Lois, Christopher Reeve, their romance. It does have the same ending as the first, but it was original ending. I kind of like it. It's kind of cool seeing it again, even though it's a bit redundant. But the Kryptonians are a lot more evil in this. They're filled more with dread. The scene at the White House, General Zod's a lot more intimidating. Everything just feels serious. It has bits of humor still, but it doesn't have that level of camp that the Richard Lester version or the Superman 3 Richard Lester movie had. Or 4. This still feels serious like the Superman the movie from 1978, and it's awesome. It makes me wonder what Richard Donner could have done and what it could have been if he finished the film. It probably would have been the most perfect superhero series ever. I mean, I just love it. And it's an honor and just a blessing that we got this version, at least somewhat to its original vision, closest to it. Christopher Reeve made us believe a man could fly, and I just love everything about this cut. If you love Superman 2, I love both versions, but if you loved it, check out the Richard Donner cut. Online, it's a bit divisive, but if you're a Superman fan, you're going to enjoy the changes I made, and if you're a fan of the first movie, you're really going to enjoy the Richard Donner cut. It's one of those, if you haven't seen it, you'll be like, wow, how did I not catch this before? It is that amazing, and I just love it, and the fighting. Everything about it was very state-of-the-art and ahead of its time, yet it continues the sequel mold that the theatrical cut did, and really set the template again like other films followed in the superhero genre. Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut is an awesome sequel from beginning to end. But number 1, personally, for me on my list is Superman the movie. I hated this movie when I was a kid. I found it really boring. But like the first Star Wars, I really grew to appreciate it more the older I got. And it is a fantastic film, an epic Americana piece of art. It took the Superman character seriously. Peanut Butter and Jelly, Coca-Cola, and Superman is as Americana as you can get, and Richard Donner directed such a superb, well-crafted film. Gene Hackman's performance, Ned Beatty, Christopher Reeve here, Glenn Ford, Margot Kidder, Jackie Cooper, the whole cast and crew. Mark McClure as Jimmy Olsen, who has a cameo in Justice League. Everybody did a fantastic job, and this showed you how to do a Superman or superhero origin film, and it's the best Superman film still to this day. Even with the dated effects, it was so state-of-the-art and just amazing. Christopher Reeve is a living embodiment, or was a living embodiment, of Superman, and I love him. He is Superman. He was Superman, and there's nobody else that can top him. They can do a great job. Christopher Reeve is Superman the way that Hugh Jackman is Wolverine, Chris Evans is Captain America, and Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man. Christopher Reeve is Superman, and he made us believe a man could fly. Richard Donner did such a fantastic job. Without this film, you wouldn't have the amazing origins of Wonder Woman or Batman Begins from Christopher Nolan. This film inspires so much in the genre. It really showed you that a comic book character can be taken seriously or can be done in a serious manner. Not dark and gloomy, but a serious manner of where you take the material seriously enough, where you make it a real film, a real motion picture event. You don't treat it as some cartoon or a piece of satire. No, you take it seriously. My favorite Superman film to date. Anyway, those are my top 10 personal favorite Superman movies. If you have a different list, which most likely you will, let me know in the comments below your top 10 favorite Superman films. And be on the lookout later this week for my review of Justice League, both non-spoiler and spoiler review, and I will have a special Justice League report on my Dark Knight of Steel channel. In the meantime, you can go to my Dark Knight of Steel channel, enjoy some Superman Batman tributes, and go to the Frederick Lopez channel. Feel free to look around this channel, check out my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street films, my favorite Scream films, my favorite Batman moments, and more reviews of the Superman Batman films and Wonder Woman, and the upcoming Justice League this week. Stand for truth, justice, and the American way, and have a wonderful day, everyone.